If you can drop the pens right now, what I would like to do is I'm really keen on getting some help from you. Over the weekend, I watched the Super Bowl halftime performance by Kendrick Lamar.
The National Football League welcomes you to the Apple Music Super Bowl 59 halftime show.
I'm Sharon Brett Kelly, and no, this is not a podcast about Super Bowl halftime or Kendrick Lamar. It's actually about the online onslaught our young people are facing. For the detail today, I'm in class to find out how they are handling it. And what better way to get them to sit up and take notice but to talk about the show that brought in more than 130 million viewers, a record.
And I'm a bit confused. The problem is that I'm about 1,000 years old and I haven't come across Kendrick Lamar before.
The revolution about to be televised. You picked the right time, but the wrong guy.
This is Auckland's Macleans College teacher, Jerome Cargill. He's asking his Year 13 media students about the Pulitzer Prize-winning rapper and the online reaction to his performance at Super Bowl.
I'm hoping that you guys can help me, because what I did is, after watching it, I went online and tried to make sense of what I'd seen. So I googled the Kendrick Lamar performance and I looked at the news that had been written about it to start off with. So I got this headline: Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime show review, game over for Drake. Now, I'm not that familiar with Kendrick Lamar, but I do know that him and Drake don't get along.
This past summer's rap battle between Drake and Kendrick Lamar, and now it's at the center of a legal dispute.
At the heart of that bombshell lawsuit that has everyone talking, Kendrick Lamar's record-breaking smash single, Not Like Us.
Say Drake, I hear you like I'm young.
But then the next one went down. NFL apologises over Super Bowl halftime show snub as Kendrick Lamar performance is slammed. Okay, how bad was this performance? So then I went to the YouTube comments and I went, okay, well, surely that will help me understand what I've just seen. So I went to the YouTube comments and this one stood out. It called it iconic, historic, beautiful, poetry, truth.
That halftime performance was probably the greatest piece of art we have seen since Shakespeare.
And then I went back to the news and I saw that Trump was fuming because Kendrick Lamar sends a powerful message at Super Bowl, which I guess has something to do with that image of making the American flag, potentially.
The President of the United States attended the Super Bowl in New Orleans. He did not have a good time. In fact, he left the game early.
Then I went like, okay, maybe memes will help me understand.
From memes, he went to Instagram Reels, then Substack, and finally X.
So all of these different perspectives out there on the internet I got from trying to understand how to respond to Kendrick Lamar's halftime show performance. Which of those should I trust? Which of those should I not listen to? Which of those are true? Which of those is not true?
These students are learning how to look at all these news and views critically, how to sift through what's real and fake, decipher the dis and misinformation. But not all students have these lessons. Media literacy is not compulsory in the curriculum. And no surprise, Jerome, as head of media at the school, has got a beef with that. He invited me to the class after the Detail's recent podcast, A Step Up in Fake News, about the growing tidal wave of misinformation.
This context, looking at Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime performance, it's probably, in terms of unimportant through to important news, where would you put that on the spectrum? Would you say it's unimportant or important? Yeah, so most people are pointing towards the unimportant side of things. But what if I did a similar thing for like the war in Ukraine? How would I know what's true, what's not? What if I wanted to find out more about the school lunches that are going on in New Zealand that we've had lots of news articles about recently? What if I wanted to find out more about Palestine at the moment? these things have massive implications for the news, and us being able to navigate these spaces effectively is such a huge part about you guys being media consumers that can navigate and understand the spaces that you get information from. So there's a lot on your shoulders as young people.
Happy days.
Hi. Well, I want to know if these young people feel that burden. So here goes. Where do you go on social media? Where do you get your information?
TikTok. I know. Firstly, I would go on my TikTok For You page, and if I see something that really interests me, I would further go to the news or something. I do research current facts, and then I know I'm educated in it before I go and tell people oh, did you see this?
So you might see something on TikTok, but you think, I want to find out what the facts are behind it, the truths. And where do you go to for that?
Either Google or a government website.
Right.
Yeah.
Does everybody here mostly go on TikTok?
Instagram and Facebook are definitely my main two sort of social media pages. But there's also that little thing in my phone. It's if I swipe one way, there's a news feed that pops up, and that gives me all sorts of targeted articles of all sorts of stuff that I've either been Googling or YouTubing. It's because I'm a musician, I get a lot of music stuff coming up there, different instruments and what orchestras are playing this weekend and that sort of thing.
The thing about Instagram and TikTok is I don't really go into the news further on the platform. I kind of look at it first and I'm wow, this is pretty interesting. Then I'll kind of go online and search it up more through more trusted sources.
Such as?
Just I don't really remember the article names, but most of it will probably be government related websites or actually trusted sources.
What do you look at on TikTok? What comes your way?
Mostly photography related. I'd get on my feed. Nothing really news related, but I only search up on TikTok. I don't go on Google. I'm just further search on TikTok, anything news related.
Why TikTok?
It's short form. It's pretty easy to get, and it's not I have to read through a massive article. It's someone easily explaining it to me. And a lot of opinions. Right,
a lot of opinions, but how do you know if you're getting the facts?
No actual idea until a good amount of people have said something. There's a bunch of people saying one thing is cool, and then there's a tiny group saying another thing. I'm okay, there's probably a reason why one group is saying one thing in one group, and the tiny group is saying something else.
So that's how you figure out whether it's
I'm just
true
mostly
or
looking
not.
at the majorities and stuff, and then that's probably when I'm going to go on Google and see a little bit more. And then continue my day not being bothered.
So you put the topic into Google and then what? Click on the news?
Oh, I not really. I just click the news and I just look at the article names and just scroll.
When you read something, can you always tell whether it's the truth or not?
Depends. I definitely have to trust sources. I follow AP, Associated Press, NZ Herald, and then the Washington Post. Those are my three main ones. But whenever there's something happening, I've got on my phone, I've got NBC News app, ABC News US, and CBS. So whenever something big overseas happens, I will generally receive notifications from all three of them. And that's when I know something big's happening, and I generally can take a generalization that is newsworthy and it's happening.
But what about if it's just general stuff? I'm thinking for young men, there's a lot of talk about toxic masculinity. Do you get that lots of feeds like that?
Definitely. There is quite a few, on social media, TikTok and Instagram, there is a few of them that, videos that come up that are quite toxic.
The toxic masculinity has been popping up on TikTok a lot. There's more people that focus on their looks and stuff, that make it really invested in that. There's a part of it, toxic masculinity, that even to look a certain way for a male.
The best look type thing.
Yeah. It's a term they call looks maxing.
Maxing, as in M-A-X-I-N-G.
Yeah.
But it's more than just the way you look, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
how you behave.
It's how these people just want the views and clicks so they can get more of their words spread around and stuff. That's mostly what it comes down to. They want the attention.
And is it negative?
There's a lot of negativity that can come from it because it's saying, if you look like this, you can't achieve this sort of thing. And that can be detrimental to people who can't change that, and for things that you can't change like that, like your face shape, you can't really change that.
Do people take it seriously?
I think young people are far more influenced than they'd care to admit. There's definitely a lot of stuff that we see that is embedded with us in our minds. Even if it's not in the front of our minds, it's there still. It's exposure, the exposure of that toxic masculinity or sexism, that sort of you should look one way or act one way, definitely is ingrained deep in your brain, even if it's not in the forefront of your thoughts.
What do you say about that?
Like, on the points of toxic masculinity, like, even on my For You page, I always get it. People so easily can get influenced by it because they just see it over and over again without even thinking that they've seen it. It's so generalized in our society at our young age, like at 16, 17, 18, that's just all we think about. Like, how can we fit in to make sure people like us?
If you don't like it, what do you do about it?
There's not really like anything that you can or can't do. It's just like you can have friends that just accept you to be you. Like, it's who I am. Like, even people say this, but I'm just going to do what I want to do.
What is the worst thing that you see on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram? The thing that bothers you the most?
A lot of it goes unfiltered. So nothing on there is really monitored, and even if it is, sometimes things still get through the cracks. There's going to be a lot of like unfiltered videos, stuff like that are just kind of inappropriate against guidelines, but people still find a way to post them anyways. There's also people who kind of just like rage bait on purpose. So they'll put in...
What's that? You have to explain that.
Rage bait. Okay. So rage baiting, it's kind of like they purposely put out content that's going to like annoy people or like make them angry for like, so they get more interaction with their content and stuff. So there's a lot of like rage bait surrounding kind of like toxic masculinity, especially because it's kind of become like a trend almost. There's like a lot of like jokes and like inside words like kind of within our generation that are like terms that like are used against like men that like may like present more feminine, men who don't really go with the traditional like male stereotype. There's like a lot of terms like against that's kind of like mocking or derogatory. It's kind of like a lot of that has been like trending right now, and even around school.
Where is this all coming from? Is it, New Zealand? Is it?
No, definitely not New Zealand. I think the trend starts overseas. You could say like America, definitely that heavily influences our youth, like on social media such as TikTok. All those trends, the major ones, resonate overseas. But like the culture within schools, that happens because we see it happening overseas, so we bring it into here. It just gets evolved. And then you got also like the localized trends that happen and merge into those major trends, such as the masculinity getting judged. If a man's been nice to a woman, his friends will get defensive about that and start judging him for how he's acting. So it just depends on how it's happening in society. It's just changing.
How pervasive is it? Is it there all the time?
Definitely. It definitely depends on who's around you as well. I know, like, around men, it's a lot different to if you're around females all the time.
What about girls? I mean, what do young women tend to be interested in?
I feel like as we grow up, like even our parents, they're like, oh, she's a girl, she needs to play with Barbie, she needs to play with dolls, like she can't play with cars because that's not a girly thing. Even just me liking like baggy clothes or anything, like I'm judged heavily for that because today's trend, like girls need to be dressed tightly, like in tight shirts. When we want to go out, we should wear dresses, heels. It's just ingrained in our society that it's just really hurtful.
Is enough being done to kind of protect you as young people?
The media is not filtering anything. So everything that we see is just what people have said, and it's these social norms that are coming up again and again, and that's how they get passed down, is through this lack of filtering and this, I don't want to say ancient viewpoint, but it's not modern with, as she said, girls play with dolls and should do ballet and netball. Those aren't boys' things. It's that sort of thinking that needs to stop.
Does it need to be controlled more, and how would that happen?
Yes, it does need to be controlled more, but I think the issue with is how, because there's so many, like, it's so free filtered, and it's like, it's meant to be designed that way, so if you limit it, it kind of destroys, like, the purpose of it as well. But the thing with it is, since there's, like, so much, like, opinions and judgment from, like, everything, like, anything you do ends up getting judged regardless. And I think, like, as a generation, we've kind of grown scared to become perceived, so we've all ended up just kind of taking, like, one safe, like, stereotype / route that like prevents us from being judged or like kind of like keeps us safe from like the perceivement of other people. So I feel like, so since now like in school, a lot of the time like what ends up happening is we're not actively trying to like judge people into like one stereotype or not, but it's just kind of like we feel pressured to just like stay in that like theme so we don't get judged. And it kind of like just helps us feel more fit in. And then what happens is when someone kind of steps out of that boundary, then people will end up kind of going like, kind of like, well, not really bullying per se, but they kind of like joke about it in a way that like ends up getting perceived that way, even if it's unintentional. So it's kind of just been like really generalized now. Like it's kind of just like everyone feels that they should stay to fit in. When someone doesn't, then it gets kind of like judged out by other people.
Jerome Cargill is organising the second annual Media Literacy Week for schools in May, but he says that's nowhere near enough.
Students and young people are in need of media education more than ever before because their life is now so online and it's so ubiquitous, the media consumption experiences that they're having. There's just no denying that. So that we're not providing them with a robust curriculum that would help support them navigate this, I think is a true issue in our world at the moment, and it will only be exacerbated because it's not going away. The online experiences that they're having are dramatically increasing as they go on. We're part of an attention economy, and we're not winning the fight against big tech. They are winning, and they are capturing more and more of our young people's attention.
Why isn't it not in the curriculum? I mean, it's not like it's just popped up this year. It's been around since COVID, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, and before that as well. I think like historically, I think we need to think about just how underserved media studies and media literacy has been, because, you know, when we had our curriculum written in 2007, media studies was left out of that. So we are not in the booklet for the paper booklet of our national curriculum. That was sort of somewhat corrected a couple of years later, where they produced our Media Studies Teaching and Learning Guide, but we're still not in that paper booklet that gets printed. So we're a learning area that sits outside that, which shows the kind of how we're held, I guess, from that big picture idea of what education is and what our curriculum is centred around.
These young people that I've been talking to, the negativity that they have talked about, the pressure that they're talking about, they're just left to themselves to figure it all out.
Yeah, in a large way. I think that's where our responsibility comes in terms of designing a curriculum that meets those needs. There is knowledge and understanding and certain things that we can address through a curriculum that will support them to navigate that. Because for so long we've had sort of a protectionist idea about young people and online experiences, and that is basically to put our head in the sand and then use censorship or guardrails to protect them from it. We know that's no longer effective. We cannot stop them from accessing the things that they're consuming now. When I talk about a knowledge-rich curriculum for media literacy, I'm thinking about ensuring that students, young people, learn about things like algorithms, understanding confirmation bias and balance and how that works, things like moral panics. What they really need is a space that's safe and discuss those things. And I think the classroom is one of those spaces.
This is a media class, so these students have actually elected to be part of this class. It's not compulsory, is it?
No.
So they might be learning about thinking critically. Mm-hmm. What about the rest of the school?
Well, that's what I think. There's two schools of thought that come to how we can address that, and one is media becomes some sort of compulsory experience that occurs in some sort of curriculum way, whether it be in a junior level where everyone gets a dose of media education. Or we start thinking of media literacy as something that should be occurring across the curriculum, because every single subject area are using media texts. You know, even math has a math textbook, which is a media text, and we can teach them to examine that and unpack that in that context too.
As a teacher, how do you keep an eye on this?
It's akin to being on a playground. Like the online space is a playground, and at the moment we put kids in there and we don't look after them, we don't watch them. They play and they fall and they make mistakes, and often involves them getting hurt. That's true of the first time that they used physical playgrounds, but we were there to catch them, we were there to support them. And I think what we need to do is be more conscious of the digital playground that they're in so that we can support and be around them. That involves a role for educators, that involves a role for parents and whānau, for friends, and involves a big role for the students themselves. The students have to be at the centre of this.
I guess I was quite blown away by the discussion around toxic masculinity and how it seems very pervasive, even for the young women. Is that the big topic? Is that what you see in terms of what we should be worried about?
Yeah, I think that's comes up a lot. And I guess the thing that I always go to when it comes up is just to boil it down to what it is. The people putting these messages out are grifters. They are just targeting young, vulnerable people in order to make a buck. When we boil it down to that, it doesn't seem as powerful anymore. But what seems to have changed is just the ubiquity of it. It is now everywhere. And I'm deeply worried, particularly about junior classrooms now that they have so much access to the stuff as well, but not so much the maturity to be able to manage that or the perspective or the critical thinking skills to be able to do it. And that, again, that comes back to curriculum. How do we enable them to have the skills to be able to navigate that successfully and call a spade a spade?
So what's your feeling, Jerome, if it's not there in the curriculum? You know, this classroom that I can see, they're amazing and they're good thinkers, but that's not all New Zealand children. What's your feeling about how they're going to be able to handle this onslaught of mis and disinformation that just seems to be growing and growing?
Yeah, I've got a lot of hope because these young people, as you've discovered today, are absolutely amazing. And I've got hope for our momentum that we're building with this discussion of media literacy and the importance of a media curriculum that will get picked up. We will get there and there will be a nationwide discussion of what that should look like. And it will hopefully sooner rather than later be something that every young person gets a good bite at, because at the moment it is a lottery. It is a pick and mix in terms of what type of media education one might get. And I hope that there will be a future very soon where that won't be the case. Where we've dropped the ball is in the shift from what was traditional media to today's mediascape, whereby in a traditional media world where we had film, radio, television, it was mass media, it was water cooler stuff, it was very centralized, and there was this idea of the media gods putting down their messages to the consumers, and it was a very one-size-fits-all understanding of what it was like. It is nothing like that now. There are arrows in every direction from consumers to producers, and some consumers are producers themselves, and these young people are making media, but they're consuming media from all sorts of different places that are not just the media companies and organisations at the top. It is media from all over the place, and what they're encountering online from social media is a lot of stuff that are produced by people their age rather than people that have much more life experience and are reflecting that back. And I think that can be a positive thing if we're navigating it with the skills of media literacy so that it can be a positive experience, not one that backfires.
I asked the Ministry of Education if there were plans to include media literacy in the curriculum and got a statement from them. It said the government and ministry remains committed to making sure that all young New Zealanders are equipped with the necessary skills to thrive in an increasingly complex world. I'm paraphrasing here. The national curriculum is being updated, and in English from years 0 to 6, that includes giving students the skills to understand the difference between fact and opinion and mis and disinformation. And in maths and statistics, years 0 to 8, students look at the ethical gathering, interpretation and communication of data. The part of the curriculum that media studies come under is currently being updated and will be available for public consultation at the end of this year. That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production made with the support of RNZ and NZ On Air. This episode was engineered by William Saunders and produced by Alexia Russell. Thanks to Jerome Cargill and his Year 13 media students at Macleans College. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Ka kite.